How to build a survival bag, like a WWII soldier, the forgotten kit that still works today. A World War II soldier didn't survive because he was lucky. He survived because everything on his back had a purpose and nothing was wasted. That's the secret most people miss. WWII survival bags weren't about comfort. They were about staying alive when supply lines snapped, weather turned hostile, and help was days or even weeks away. And once you strip away the uniforms and outdated gear, what you're left with is one of the most practical survival systems ever carried by a human being. Today, we're breaking down how to build a survival bag the way a WWII soldier did. Not as a costume, not as a collector's display, but as a brutally efficient, historically grounded survival loadout that still makes sense right now. And here's the interesting part. Almost everything in that bag followed the same ruthless logic: multi-purpose, durable, repairable, and usable under stress. Let's get into it. The WWII survival philosophy. A WWII soldier didn't carry gear to feel prepared. He carried gear because failure meant exposure, injury, capture, or death. Weight was limited, space was limited, and every item had to justify itself in the worst conditions imaginable. This wasn't survival just in case. This was survival under constant threat. That's why the WWII survival bag focused on 4 core priorities: shelter, warmth, water, and calories. Everything else supported those pillars. If your modern survival bag doesn't clearly serve one of those needs, a WWII ondo, tutus teswameters. So doi subfiswamidsi utusanix. Arms ever cut it without hesitation. That mindset is where we start. The bag itself was the first survival tool. WWII soldiers didn't use tactical backpacks packed with zippers and compartments. They used canvas packs, haversacks, or bread bags made from thick cotton duck or webbing. These materials mattered. Canvas didn't tear easily. It could be repaired with needle and thread. It didn't melt near fire. And when soaked, it still held together. A WWII-style survival bag should be simple. One main compartment, minimal straps, no fragile plastic buckles. The bag itself doubled as insulation, padding, a pillow, and sometimes even emergency shelter material. Here's the clever part. Canvas bags absorbed water slowly, which meant they could be used to cool contents in heat or retain warmth in cold. Soldiers learned to work with their gear, not fight it. Shelter came before comfort. Modern survival kits often, overemphasize gadgets. Back in the war, soldiers went straight to shelter. A shelter half, poncho, or ground sheet was standard issue for many armies. Now, these weren't exactly tents. They were more like modular survival skins. 2 soldiers could button their shelter halves together to form a proper tent. Alone, one piece became a windbreak, a rain cover, or even ground insulation. This was important because exposure, honestly, kills faster than hunger. Your WWII-inspired survival bag, it really just needs a simple, durable fabric sheet. No poles, no complicated setup. Just something that works when your hands are numb and visibility's poor. Soldiers practiced deploying their shelter fast, often in the dark, because any hesitation could mean hypothermia. Here's the interesting part. Shelter gear was always carried externally, not because it looked good, but because it had to be accessible instantly. Warmth was engineered, not just assumed. WWII soldiers didn't rely on sleeping bags in many environments. Instead, they layered intelligently. Wool was king. Wool uniforms, socks, scarves and blankets dominated because wool insulates even when wet. Cotton kills in cold conditions, but wool, well, it forgives mistakes. In a WWII-style survival bag, spare socks were given priority over spare clothes. Dry feet really meant mobility, and, well, mobility meant survival. Blankets weren't just for sleeping, not by a long shot. They served as wraps, padding, splints, stretchers, and even insulation against that frozen ground. A folded wool blanket tucked inside a canvas bag that would turn the bag itself into a proper thermal buffer. This is where, honestly, the old logic really shines through. Instead of lugging around one specialized item, soldiers carried one thing that could become 5. Fire, now, that was treated like a lifeline. Every World War II soldier carried fire-starting capability, often more than one, actually. Matches were sealed in waterproof tins or dipped in wax. Lighters were prized and, well, shared among the men. Fire wasn't just for warmth, It sterilized water, cooked food, dried clothes, boosted morale, and even signaled allies. A World War II survival bag doesn't rely on a single fire method. It assumes failure, always. Wet matches, broken lighter, lost gear. That was just the reality. Here's where things get clever. Soldiers often carried tinder disguised as normal items. Cotton from bandages, waxed paper from rations, even gun-cleaning patches. Nothing was dead weight. Water was heavy, so knowledge mattered, perhaps more than anything else. Canteens were limited, Refilling them safely was the real skill, really. WWII soldiers boiled water whenever possible. They also used purification tablets when available, but they never trusted a single method, not for a moment. Boiling tins, mess kits and cups were essential because they doubled as cooking tools. A WWII survival bag always includes a metal container that can go directly into fire. No plastic, no coatings, just steel or aluminum, plain and simple. The real takeaway isn't the container, honestly. It's the mindset. Soldiers learned where to find water, how to judge sources, and how to stretch what they had. Gear supported knowledge, not the other way around. Rations were dense, dry, and unglamorous. Hardtack, canned meat, chocolate, sugar and coffee dominated World War II survival food. Why? Because they lasted, they travelled well, and they delivered calories under stress. Your World War II-style survival bag shouldn't focus on fancy meals. It should focus on fuel. Carbohydrates for quick energy, fats for long-term output, and small morale boosters, because mental resilience mattered more than people admit. Here's the part most modern kits miss, Soldiers ate cold when necessary. Fire was valuable after all. Sometimes food just wasn't worth the flame. WWII soldiers didn't carry multi-tools loaded with gimmicks. They carried knives, shovels, and basic repair kits. A simple knife handled food, cordage, shelter work, and defence. Entrenching tools dug foxholes, fire pits, and drainage channels. Sewing kits repaired clothing, gear, and wounds in emergencies. Everything earned its place by solving real problems repeatedly. No batteries, no fragile components, no dependence on resupply. First aid kits were simple, you know. Bandages, antiseptic, pain relief if available. The goal wasn't perfect treatment. It was stopping bleeding, preventing infection, and getting back to movement. Soldiers understood that immobility was dangerous. This is where WWII survival thinking becomes, well, brutally honest. Medical gear was about buying time, not eliminating risk. You know, the genius of a World War II survival bag is that it assumes chaos. Gear breaks, weather turns, plans fail, everything is layered, everything is redundant, and nothing depends on electricity or precision manufacturing. That's why these principles still matter. You don't need to copy the gear exactly. You need to copy the thinking. Build a bag where every item has more than one job. Choose materials that forgive mistakes. Prioritize warmth, shelter, water, and calories. And, you know, remember that knowledge is lighter than equipment. Because World War II soldiers didn't survive history's harshest environments with technology. They survived with discipline, simplicity, and ruthless practicality. And if you want to keep uncovering the forgotten skills that kept people alive long before modern convenience, make sure you subscribe to Before Modern Times, like this video, and share it with someone who thinks survival is all about gadgets. History still has lessons left to teach us, if we're willing to carry them forward.